First, thank you for all of your intervention, especially those in French. This is a great mark of respect. Thank you. And I want to ask you, we heard, us citizens, poor citizens, we heard about things like Aurora project or Ajax project or magneto-hydrodynamics propulsion or things like withers controls. And recently we heard those things in ionization of atmosphere to create rains in local area. So my question is, with the power of the industrial military complex, which grew since the end of the World War II, and with the absence of knowledge to us, the absence of information which is given to us poor citizens, we are in a position of doubts. Even with the dynamics of BRICS, I am asking you, what will you do to rebuild this confiance, the link between citizens and powers and governments? Thank you.
Would anybody like to answer to this question?
I will give. Excusez-moi, je vais me prononcer en français. Je voudrais juste vous donner un exemple.
I would just like to give you one example of how we can bring together the international and national agendas. There's a doctrinal document which defines the main axes of Russian policy.
Le concept de la politique étrangère. La deuxième édition a été approuvée.
Okay, excuse me, microphone was not on. He wants to give just one example of a major document, doctrinal document of the Russia, which gives the main axes of the policy that they are using to bring together national, international agendas. Now, the main concern is the pivot, is to promote, to ensure an outside environment which is favorable for our economic development. If we don't have good relations between Russia and neighboring countries, if there's not a multilateral framework that ensures the proper management of conflicts, be that environmental problems or strategic problems, but without that, there's no possibility for countries to get along. And here I would just like to say a few words about security. We don't consider security to be indivisible. We can hope, as it's the case now, it shouldn't be thought that one's own security should be ensured to the detriment of that of other countries, and I think in particular of NATO in that respect. And with that vision, you're not able to create a positive agenda, and that is exactly what's missing in Europe.
I'd like to add. That was a very good question, and how BRICS countries can tackle these kind of new technologies and others. And we have already, my Russian colleague and I had already spoken enough about what BRICS is all about. And one of the main agreements, or one of the main principles that all BRICS countries are agreed on, at least in principle, is that we want to get away from this fashionable myth today that's going around, that market forces and technology together can solve all human problems, which is a great myth. It has been disproved very clearly after the great financial breakdown in 2008, that pure market forces by themselves or pure technology by themselves cannot solve all human problems. Of course, they can help to a certain extent, but it has to be a market plus and a technology plus approach to deal with human problems.
Hello. Well, first of all, I'd like to.
Mr. Shise,
Oh, sorry.
我也想答一下。
Mr. Shise wants to say.
这个金砖国家的发展和这个地缘政治的关系问题，我觉得是一个很有意思的题目。我很同意。
About the development of the BRICS together with geopolitics
对金砖国家的
is a very interesting question.
过低的股价，也不能过高。
I agree with my
当今这个
Indian counterpart.
是一种上升
We
的
can neither overestimate nor underestimate the role of the BRICS.
一个在全球层面，
These are countries which are being formed today.
在全球层面，
Hey.
金砖国家地位的上升、话语权的增加，将会
There are different points of development.
的力量失衡。
Of course, on the international level, we need to change the balance of international forces. And the power of the BRICS, for
国
example,
际格局失衡之后的作用，它是一种牵制和制
in
约。
respect to,
我觉得这个作用，是一个
or let's say it will be a counterweight
现在金砖
to, on the international
其
scene,
他的一些国际机制，包括在联合国、在集团体啊。第二个层面，
that's not only true for the international institutions, but also for regional institutions.
它都是
And
每一个地区的领袖。
regionally, the
俄罗斯
countries
在欧亚地区，它是一个领头羊，
in the BRICS, each country is a leader in his own
也可以扮演一
region.
个领袖的作用。南非在，
India in South Asia,
那么中国在亚太地区也有它。
South Africa in
所以这些
Africa,
国家呢，它更好的
and
在历史
Brazil
层面
in Latin
发挥一
America,
个
not to
对于
mention
地区
China.
和平和发展的。
So on the regional
所以它对
level,
地区
they
的繁荣和稳定。
promote development and peaceful development in the
第三
economy.
个就是在国家层
So
面
it's a
本身
very important
金砖国
role.
家之间内部交流
And on the national level,
肯定是会推动他们经济的发展，尤其是推动
there
民生项目的。
there's an exchange and communications among the different individual countries of the BRICS.
使老百姓能够感受到
We have
这种合
to
作给他们带来的福
Be
利。
careful. We have to pay attention not only to the great projects, but also projects which concern the daily life of
本
people.
身同其他国家的
This development must serve to develop to improve the living standards of the people.
一个新
And that's what the international relations are all about.
进一步的
It's a new entity. Its role is growing.
这个一种这个期待
It's
着
expanding,
它去发挥
and we
更
should
好的作用啊！谢谢。
we expect this entity to play a ever-increasing role. Thank you.
Excuse me, Helga LaRouche wants to add something to this.
I just want to take up this one element, how to, overcome the gap between the governments and the people, the alienation which has taken place in the West. And there I can say, the answer to it is inspiration of philosopher kings. I would say Xi Jinping is a philosopher king. I would urge you to read his speeches, which are, truly of a dimension. For example, if you read the speech he gave when he went to India about Indian history, which proved that he is a deep, deep scholar. Then Modi, he said, let's create a mass movement of development. He is inspiring the young people of India. Putin, why do you think Putin has 90% support in the own population, which totally contradicts what the Western media are portraying? And, I think that the idea of a dream for humanity is really what will do that. Because once people have a vision of how beautiful the future can be, young people will want to learn, they want to study, they want to be part of that. And, I can only say yesterday, Mr. LaRouche announced that, the policy for the United States will be a win-win American policy. So we will get even America on board for that. So that's what I wanted to say.
Please go ahead with your question.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm really happy to hear so many big countries talking about cooperation and going towards harmony and a better future. I hear a lot about all the economic benefits that all the countries will make. I would like to change the scale a little bit and maybe talk about the population. All of this money, can we kind of fear that we will see the gap between the poor and the wealthy getting bigger again, or maybe hope that everybody, every population on Earth will be able to get access to dignity and health and education? Well, what can we wait for all of this? Thank you.
Let's continue.
Allô? Marc Benoun d'Argenteuil. La guerre froide, la guerre chaude, un officier supérieur, un colonel de la NSA.
There's a colonel of the NSA who declared
Sur Internet,
on Internet and Global Info
la guerre aurait lieu,
that the war would take place in the summer,
dit-il, je cite,
by hoping
sera pas nucléaire.
and saying, I hope it will not be a nuclear war. In face of these declarations and events, do the BRICS, did they become conscious about the urgency to have appropriate common defense policies, even if it's not the Warsaw Pact recreation? My second question goes to the speaker, that is a beneficial system. The capitalism of Mr. Friedman and Thatcher, does he think that this kind of capitalism will succeed where so-called socialism or the social democracy has failed? If you allow me this, another question. This week, we're talking about terrorism. I listened with much attention Noam Chomsky, the American linguistic, who said that the terrorist countries in the world today are the United States and Israel. I want to have your viewpoint. My last question. I'm sorry. I'm a retired trade union of the airplane factory SNECMA. I have seen Taylorism, which means montage, series production. This is kind of slavery. But today, with the new conception of labor and with the new rules and the rule conceptions of machines, is this different? I think we're even more into slavery than before, because men and women, they go, people work 24 hours and 24 hours working with their handies and laptops. Thank you.
So the first question was on defense, because there are more and more alarming statements. He quoted somebody from the NSA saying that war could start this summer. Have the BRICS any thinking about a defense system to be built against this? Is there any talks so far about any defense policy?
So far, the BRICS negotiations, both at the academic level and at least so far in all the summits, BRICS has not conceived itself as any kind of defense alliance. Of course, all BRICS countries are against war, against use or threat of force, And they are for multilateral kind of negotiations to solve all global issues, including Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, etc., etc. Having said that, the BRICS countries would like to contribute, at least in a positive way, to ideas that can lead to a decrease of tensions. But as of now, BRICS is not thinking of any active defense kind of activity. I am no longer in the government. I may be wrong, so my Russian colleague may correct me if, or add something to that.
Je suis d'accord dans la vision pour l'instant, en tout cas.
I agree that the vision for the moment
Dans le processus de négociation, de discussion.
on the process of negotiation, the vision of BRICS as a military alliance is not under consideration. That doesn't mean that we don't have joint positions concerning multilateral issues, for example, in the United Nations or the Security Council. The question of war and peace is certainly very much present in the minds of our leaders.
Several questions that were brought up, which are important. The second one is this question of Taylorism and a form of slave labor, not because you're using force, but because it's on assembly lines. It's work on very limited parts. It can be very modern, but it's nonetheless people working on assembly lines day by day on only one specific element. And now, even with this modernization that we have, people are working many more hours a day. So how to get out of this concept of labor? Jonathan.
我再补充两句，刚才那个关于金砖国家的，我觉得金砖国家的出现主要还是从它的经济角度，金砖这个概念是从经济角度来看它的作用。
Well, this is done from the economic standpoint. The BRICS, I mean. The problem we are faced with is economic. It's the slowing down.
也出现一些麻烦，巴西。
We call that in China the new normality. Russia, Brazil, China, we all have similar problems, so we want to reinforce the cooperation, and that's the priority. As far as I know, the BRICS have no strategic plans or defense plans. That's my personal standpoint.
I just would like to comment on the Chomsky statement, who is responsible for terrorism. In the next period, you will see changes on this question, namely when the 28 pages lacking from the original September 11 report will be published. And there is a growing movement in the Congress, but also among the families of the victims of September 11 to publish this. And this will happen, I'm sure of it. And then, what will come out is the role of the collaboration of Saudi Arabia and the British in all of this, naturally elements from the United States for sure. But, the real question of stopping terrorism, you have to look at the role of Saudi Arabia. You will follow this, I hope, in the next period, and also follow the publication of the documents of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency of the United States, about what the Obama administration knew on the 12th of September 2012, where they knew first that the murder of Ambassador Stevens was done by Al-Qaeda and not a spontaneous group because of anti-Islamic video. Second, that they knew about the weapon delivery from Libya to the Syrian rebels. And thirdly, that they knew that the plan was to create an Islamic state, which what you see with the ISIS today. This is all being investigated by the Benghazi Commission in the Congress right now. And once this proceeds, it will lead to an explosion because it will demystify a lot of lies which have been spread. And, I only want to follow these questions, which you cannot get in the mainstream media, but go on the website of Solidarité et Progrès, and you will find updates as they come.
Mr. Viswanathan, did you want to add something?
I'll just address those questions which talked about modern day human slavery. And basically, I understand the question as the rising inequality among the rich and the poor. If we look at the world history in the last 100 years, there have been 3 phases of very major globalization process. One was a few years before the First World War. The second phase of globalization was in the 1950s. And of course, the third and the most important phase of globalization was in the 1990s and continued into the new century. Now, studies have shown 2 distinctive things about these 3 phases of globalization. One is, it's confirmed that in all these 3 phases of globalization, the economic growth and productivity increased. But it is also true that in all these 3 phases of globalization, the inequality within countries and inequality between countries also increased. So the process of globalization certainly has led to inequalities. Put in simpler terms, the rich have become richer and the poor have become poorer. And this is particularly true of the BRICS countries. Probably Russia is an exception. But Brazil, India, China, and South Africa, our studies have shown in the academic fora that actually the inequalities have increased. And all 4 countries are very concerned about this because we cannot just sit back and, according to that old theory which has been disproved now, that let the growth continue and eventually the benefits will reach the poor. It will not. There has to be positive, proactive action by the governments to see that the inequality is decreased. And this is where we are learning from each other's experience. And I can give you one solid example. For example, India has learned a lot from the Brazilian facility of the Bolsa Familia of how to reach out to the poor by government subsidies and government donations or actually cash payments. And India, what we call the Narega system, has actually been based in some aspects of the Bolsa Familia of Brazil. So all 5 countries are learning from each other's experiences and best practices in addressing this very, very important issue of growing inequality.
I think perhaps it would also be interesting, I don't know to what extent you know the history of the French social security system and all the social institutions that were built in France after the war by the National Council, the people who had led the National Council of the Resistance. And it was, these were very important reforms because at the center of it was the idea of a human being, being a creator. Not just somebody, who has to be helped here or helped that, helped there a little bit, but really that somebody who is a creator and who must be given the possibilities of doing so. And then this creativity becomes a tremendous power to develop a society in research, in research, in production, and this is what has to be brought also into the ways, the means of production, even in the best countries today. How to eventually move, into the daily practices, just the daily machine production, into robotics more and more, and to reserve and to develop the thinking power of the population of discovering new principles much more, because this remains to be a challenge. The next question.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Je m'appelle Mohamed Mahfoud et je suis le chef de l'organisation
Ladies and gentlemen,
syrien au Danemark.
I'm the president of the Danish Syrian Association in Denmark. I have a question for Mr. Kadyshev of the Russian Embassy. As a Syrian, I'm supporting my government in Syria, and I support President Putin. But I'm somehow worried, as many of my fellow citizenmen, on the Russian position on the Syrian war, since we know that this war is not something like it is presented on French TV or in other European countries. It's not the people rising for democracy or something like this. It's a lie. The Syrian government and its army are fighting against the terrorists and the extremists in Syria over the last 5 years. As a Syrian, I cannot be not worried seeing Russia becoming sympathetic to Saudi Arabia. Are you continue to be, which we are wondering which interests you are really defending in the Middle East, or will we have the Iraq and Libyan scenario? Over the last 5 years, the Syrian army has been fighting not only against these terrorists, but also in NATO, in Iraq. It's also the involvement of NATO. It's not just ISIS or Al-Qaeda, which are on the enemy front. These terrorists are being supported by the US, France, NATO, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. This has nothing to do with the aid given by Russia to Syria or given by other BRICS countries. Thank you.
La Russie a toujours été et reste et continue de rester
Russia
des Syriens dans leurs efforts.
Is remaining loyal to the efforts of Syria to preserve and to maintain a single and sovereign state which respects peaceful and coexistence of all the communities, be them ethnical or religious. Russia is a strong adversary of terrorism wherever they come from and whatever their agenda. But I can understand very well that terrorism in one region, which seems very far from your country, is coming back to you. And if with other partners you don't react towards this common cause, things will get bad. Russia wants to favorize the dialogue among Syrians to find also a political solution of the crisis which took place in their country, which turned afterwards Syria into a very unfavorable process. I wouldn't say that we could qualify our relationships. Russia tries to maintain the links between all the major players and actors in this region, as we do in other regions, to make sure that all the gates for dialogue remain completely open.
Je voudrais finalement
souligner I want to underline
une évidence qui malheureusement
something which looks self-evident,
à la portée de la compréhension d'un certain nombre de nos partenaires.
Which many people don't get.
dans cette partie du monde,
in this part of the world, extremely unstable,
qui est le Proche-Orient,
which is the Middle East,
comme en Afrique du Nord et ailleurs d'ailleurs, il est très important de comprendre
it is very important to understand that the state,
les institutions d'État, les
the
assises,
state institutions, the
le
foundation of the state
bien-être du peuple.
are the
Si on
ultimate recourse for the general good. There's no more state institutions,
Ça, malheureusement,
people will be deprived of a major capacity.
destruction de l'État,
That's
Libye,
that's what's happening in Libya with the destruction of the state, to trying to
finir avec l'État en Irak.
the dismantlement of the state institutions in Iraq, in Syria, and elsewhere.
Dangereux comme approche.
It's very, very dangerous as an approach. We have to oppose it,
Au-delà
and we see the consequences which go beyond
des différentes parties du monde.
all these countries and threaten us all. Thank you.
Go ahead. We have 8 more minutes of discussion before the lunch break.
Bonjour, mesdames, messieurs. Je suis une Polonaise vivant en France et je voulais demander, en fait, je voulais dire que après les élections de nos nouveaux présidents, c'est M. le Président Poutine qui était le premier à le féliciter, à la grande joie de tous les Polonais qui ont voté pour lui. Et je voulais
After the Polish elections,
que la Pologne,
is it conceivable that Poland can be associated to the BRICS effort? And then I have another question, very concrete. There's a group in India which wanted to launch a motor with compressed air, and this apparently was stopped by the suicide of the Tata company, an Indian company. My question is, if the BRICS are going to launch cars and airplanes operating on this compressed air principle as a fuel for these engines. Thank you.
On the first question, if I understand right, you are asking whether Poland could be a member of BRICS in future. Is that correct?
Yes, with the new president.
As of now, BRICS is not thinking of expanding. In fact, off and on there have been discussions. And the discussions have been on the basis of a principle which all of you in Europe must be very familiar. That is broadening versus deepening. I'm sure you must have heard it so many times in Europe. So the question was whether BRICS should broaden or deepen. And for the time being, all the 5 leaders of the 5 countries are agreed on the principle, even though we will collaborate with other countries on specific areas. BRICS as a group, as of now, has no intention of broadening. They will only deepen their intense cooperation in the various fields which has already been mentioned. On the question of cars with compressed air, I am not very familiar with what happened actually. Of course, a lot of innovation is going on in India because India still being a developing country and still being short of, seriously short of hydrocarbons. We would certainly like to go in for alternative kind of vehicles which also don't use so much of fossil fuel, and also to reduce the carbon footprint for us, along with the climate change and all that. But there is, as of now, no BRICS initiative to come up with a kind of new cars or something which BRICS countries. But if something happens, we will all collaborate with each other. And there were talks, at least on a bilateral scale, of some cooperation in the aerospace sector between India and Brazil, for example. And in the transportation sector, for example, in high-speed trains, there are serious talks between India and China, because China is the leading country in the technology of high-speed trains. But as of now, I am not aware of any joint BRICS efforts to produce cars.
And one more question.
我再答一个问题，这个
Mr. Shizai wants to respond.
刚才问到这个金砖国家的能源合作问题，我觉得，我想谈一下我个人的一些看法。我觉得在金砖国家之间，能源是一个很重要的合作基础，啊，这就在于金砖国家之间在能源方面它是互补的，结构上互补。有俄罗斯这样的生产国，有中国、印度这样的消费国，啊，我觉得在经济结构他们是互补的，而且相互有需求。俄罗斯需要市场，那么中国和印度是最大的市场。中国和印度的发展呢，也都需要能源。我统计了一下，去年我们中国进口的能源是3.1亿吨，占到中国进口这个数量的59%，而印度呢是5.2亿吨，啊，明年在2016年左右，印度可能要达到超过6个亿，那么它要进口的比例达到了将近占到70%，这就证明我们的需求和供应这种迫切性是非常多的，所以这个金砖国家之间发展合作，我想能源合作恐怕是优先的方向。啊，这个在这个发展过程当中，我刚才提到的一个方案，
energy will be absolutely at the center of the cooperation among BRICS nations.
然后进入到南亚，搞一
We
个
have this
欧亚地区的南北的
gas pipeline
这个
coming from Russia, going through China,
而且有些方面
going up into India. It's not just an idea. It's a very concrete project being studied right now,
符合中国的利益。
which is corresponding, which is exactly in the interest of the three countries. This is actually an example of the best cooperation possible. So with Brazil, South
我们虽
Africa,
然是最大的生产
we know
我们也是最大的消
that
费
we have
都是金砖国家的成员，但是我
common
们在
interests.
国际能源市场上，
We have
国际的能源机制方面，我
we
们
have
说话
we're the largest producer and
我们
biggest
知道这个油价
consumer.
从去年
We are big
100多美元，
Our what we say is key.
我们坐在旁边也没有什么
The
办法，
the
我们只
the
是
fall
不
of
接
the
受
price of the barrel
不
of
能改
oil.
变这种现实。
Uh,
这个就说明我
we
们
we
在
were
国际的能
we were
源
impotent to
合作
react
上
against this.
啊，我
We
们中
couldn't
国和印度和俄
intervene
罗
in
斯
this.
有加强合作的必要。
That's
我
the
们要
reason
发
why
声，要提出我们的
we
诉
we
求，
are
来
called
影响这个进程。
to
同
reinforce
时呢
our，
我觉
cooperation,
得在维护这个地区稳定、
to make our voices audible in the world.
维护
In
社
the
会
same
的
time,
发
for
展
the
和环
for
境
the
保护、生
stability,
态的
to
方面
preserve the stability
中
and the
国、印度和俄
security
罗斯，我们都有合作的
of
愿望。
these gas
所以在新能
pipelines.
源这个领域，啊，我
We
们
have
这个
also
今后
very concrete
我想那个会看到
projects
有
of
一个比
cooperation,
较
and
好的一个
including in the new
所以在这个
domains of
能
new
源领域
energy.
的合作呀，
There are very,
而
very
且我
nice
想到的一个方向
perspectives
是
possible.
中印俄的
Energy
合作，它
cooperation.
大致的走势是往
I
东走
thought, for example,
啊，和原来往西
that,
走的方向是不一样，往东和往南走，
among our
这
three
个是
countries,
一个很明显的。
India, China, and
而且
Russia,
这种走势，
it's from the west to the east. This is
因为在整个欧
contrary
亚大
to
陆
the
上，
old
能源合作
situation,
原来
which
是
went from the
以
east
东
to the
部
west.
以乌尔地区为
So
生
this
产
is
区，
now inversing.
从俄罗斯到中亚，然后到中东这样一个生产带，
So
它是满足西部地区、
there's an area
欧
of
洲地区对能
production
源的需求。那么现在
starting
这
from
个
the
形势出现
Urals
了变化，
to go
更多的
towards
俄罗
the
斯、
west,
中亚和
towards
中东
Europe.
的能源
The
向东
situation
部和
is
南部
changing now.
就加强了
There's
欧亚地区
more and more
生产
energy
国和消费国
from
之间的
Russia
一种紧
and
密
the
的
Middle
互动
East
利益的
is
互动，
now
或者
going
我们说
towards
它
the
在利益
east.
上形成一个共同
So
的。
there is an interaction
所以在这个方面，这个
more
如
intense
果金砖国家在
between
能
these
源合作
regions.
方面
So
能够迈出第一
on
步，
the domain of
那么
cooperation,
金砖国
energy
家对它
cooperation,
相互促进它的经济
the
发展方
BRICS
面，将
will
会产生非常
make
积极
their
的重
first
要的影
step.
响。
I think it will be a very, very positive evolution for all these countries and the rest of the world.